Do you enjoy doing HIIT workouts? These high-intensity interval training workouts that are super popular within the boutique fitness industry. And while so many people flock to them, they may actually be ruining your health. On this week's episode of the Exercise is Health podcast, we're going to dive into why that is and what you can do about it. We're going to cue our introduction, and then we're going to dive right into this conversation. Welcome to the Exercise is Health podcast, where we will be breaking down the strategies and tactics you need to know to build your health, strength, and function without feeling achy, sore, or injured.
We're your hosts, Julie and Charlie, the creators of the Exercise for Life membership. Your podcast starts now.
Hey, welcome back, exercisers, to the Exercise is Health podcast, brought to you by Exercise for Life Studios, where we believe that your health is your most valuable asset. And the single best thing that you can do to both boost and protect this asset is exercise. Specifically, exercise is geared towards building the health and function of your muscles. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie.
And today we are diving into this concept of HIIT workouts, high-intensity interval training workouts that are really, really popular, especially in the group fitness space with boutique studios. Yeah, they are at bigger box gyms as well, but really these smaller studios are trying to capitalize on this idea of these high-intensity circuit-style classes. But if you are trying to exercise for your health, beware, because they may actually be making you less healthy. We're going to explain why that is and what you can do about it so you can do these HIIT style workouts but not compromise your health.
I'm really excited for the end, Charlie, because we are going to tell you how you can change these HIIT workouts, because the idea of HIIT is that it really can change your health. But there are certain tweaks that we are going to teach you and show you how to do, because when you make these tweaks, then this HIIT style training not only can be really great for your health, but it will also benefit your function and your long-term health, right? Because a lot of times these HIIT style training have very strong characteristics, and once we start talking about them, you're like, oh yeah, they all do that, but they all don't have to do that. They just do that. And if we make these tweaks, then you can still get the benefits without the risk that it does propose to your health. So the first thing is, if you're not familiar with HIIT training, let's catch you up to speed. So HIIT training is high intensity interval training, or HIIT. And generally when you see a HIIT class, there's going to be a group of people. There might be stations. You're going to be alternating between exercises or rotating through exercises. And generally it's a mix of some resistance exercises like squats or push-ups or deadlifts, things like that, and a mix of cardio things like jumping jacks or jump squats or burpees, things like that. So it's usually a mix like that. It's always very high intensity, definitely catered to, a younger population or a very athletic midlife or older person, but it is generally low equipment. And I think that's why a lot of boutique places really love HIIT training, because it's low equipment and they don't want to buy equipment, or their space is too small for equipment. So when I describe that, I hope that you kind of have that picture of some different places around town, or that you've seen that, oh, okay, that is HIIT training. Now the benefit of HIIT training is that there's intensity, right? And so whenever you have intensity, that means it can be a shorter duration of time. And we all know people are always looking for ways to make their workouts shorter in time. So the thing they've got going for them is the intensity piece. And there's an issue with the way that they bring the intensity and how we're going to switch it up so it's safer for you. But that is kind of the selling point of it. It's right. Hey, we can work out and get everything done in a shorter amount of time because we bring the heat, we bring the intensity.
Exactly. And Julie, I'm really glad that you brought up that very first point and then kind of circled back around to it at the end with this idea of like HIIT workouts can actually be really good for you. They can really be a useful tool to build your health, build your strength, build your function, so long as you're doing them in a way that isn't compromising your health in the process. And like you were saying, Julie, so often because of the popularity of HIIT workouts and really the wide demographic that it can draw, there are a number of people that doing HIIT workouts really aren't appropriate for, and how the HIIT workouts are being done makes them even less appropriate for even more individuals. All right. So I think a lot of times when we approach this topic, the first thought that goes to people's mind is like, okay, well, yeah, obviously HIIT workouts aren't going to be good for me because like I'm not fit enough, I'm not strong enough, I'm not conditioned enough right now to go and do them. And that may be true, it may not be true, but it may be true, but that's actually not what we want to talk about today, because even if you are feeling like I'm strong enough, I'm fit enough, I'm well conditioned enough, I'm athletic enough, I'm young enough, whatever, to go and do the this style of workout, they still may be ruining your health. And we want to kind of dive into 3 reasons that you may not be aware of as to why this may be happening. The first one is a little bit of a catch-22 because it's one of the biggest draws for these styles of classes, especially kind of in the boutique fitness industry. But it can also be the thing that ultimately ruins your health. And it's this idea that the atmosphere, the environment, and the community aspect are emphasized. No, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that community is a bad thing. In fact, community is one of the things that can keep people consistent with their workouts, help people stay accountable, and something that people really enjoy and look forward to about their workouts. But when that is the thing that's being emphasized over the workout itself, a lot of times we can look past what is being done in the workout because we so badly want to be part of the community or so badly want to be in that environment with the music and the high energy and everything like that, be part of that atmosphere, that we can say, well, you know what, I like that part of the workout so much that, I don't really mind if it's, neglecting these other things, and those other things are actually setting you up for injury or actually setting you up for potential health complications.
Now, when you said the word community, Charlie, it makes me think of the idea of being on a team, right? So when you think of athletics and team, and there's nothing wrong, again, teams are really great. It's awesome. And it helps a lot of people and be consistent and show up. But then you're doing things for the team rather than for yourself. So the big issue that we see with a lot of HIIT training classes, when there's a group atmosphere and there's great group camaraderie, that part is really great. But if you're going to do that, make sure that you're staying focused in on what you need, not because someone's motivating you to do it, but because your body has said it's okay to do it.
Exactly. You're not just trying to keep up with the rest of the group.
Right. So that poses a big issue because when it's a team effort, you kind of get carried away, in the team wave rather than being picking it apart for yourself and figuring out what's going to work for me. And it also, I think that it also kind of taints the idea of listening to your body, because if you think about, an instructor telling you what to do when all 5 of your friends are doing it and you're like, well, that doesn't really feel good for my body. I think my body's saying that's not a good idea, but I'm going to do it because I should do it.
You don't want to be the weak link of the team.
You don't want to be the weak link. Right. So so keep that in mind. The atmosphere in the community can be really great, but just make sure it stays in its place and it's not starting to violate your body. Because one thing that I wanted to say in the beginning as well, I was just thinking, I was like, we got to say this part because when we think about exercising, improving your health, I think it gets confusing when we say, but it could not be good for your health. And because we all know exercise is good for your health. But one part of health that almost people never think about until they're completely injured, and then they think of it as a separate piece of health too, because it's just this injured part of them, is your muscles and joints, right? Your muscle and joint health has to stay tip top when you're exercising. And so a lot of exercises and a lot of exercise theories or modalities abuse this because they feel like they can, right? They can just, whatever happens. If you lose 50 pounds and you have to get 2 knee replacements, that's fine. We view that as, hey, well, the muscle health and the joint health of your knees went down so far that you now have to get them replaced. We can exercise in a way that keeps the health of your muscles and joints up. So I just wanted to bring that up just in case that part is confusing to people.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad you brought that up. That helps bring clarity to this idea of we need to make sure that our muscles are healthy, our joints stay healthy, because one of the biggest things that can end up violating that, especially in the HIIT type atmosphere, is kind of the second big issue that we see with these HIIT style workouts, and that is an emphasis on speed, okay? And whether it's doing cardio like you're using, an assault bike or a rower, and you're trying to go, 500 meters or 100 meters or however far in, a certain amount of time, as fast as you can, however far, I should say, as fast as you can, and you're really focused on speed, or you are, doing a certain number of kettlebell swings, or a certain number of deadlifts, and it's all about get it in with this amount of time or anything like that, that can be a recipe for disaster. And I mean that in the very literal sense. It can be a recipe for disaster for your body orthopedically, metabolically, even though people are saying, it's so good for your metabolic health to work out really hard. Yes, as long as it's staying appropriate for your body. It can be a recipe for disaster, neurologically throwing your autonomic nervous system completely out of whack. And so this emphasis on speed as like the thing that is going to make the exercise really hard and make the workout, this high intensity thing, really is a huge issue that needs to be managed, and it needs to be understood how to go about still being able to work out really hard, but without this emphasis on speed.
You might be sitting there thinking, okay, well, I thought the whole point of this thing was to do high intensity interval training. So we have to bring intensity in a different way other than speed, because adding speed to every exercise to create the intensity is probably the riskiest way to add intensity. So later in this podcast, I'm not going to give them away now, but we're going to tell you how you should be adding your intensity, and it's not speed. And if you do add speed, it's in a very specific place. So stick around for that. But yes, speed is probably the thing you're going to definitely see, where it's like every single exercise, whether it's cardio or resistance training, you're trying to go fast. You're trying to do it quickly. And we justify it because of the intensity name.
Right.
Okay, so the third thing that causes issues with your health with the traditional high intensity training style that we see out there is that they use a lot of distraction so that you can increase effort and increase like your input into the workout. And a lot of times you think, well, isn't that good? Like, don't I want to like put more into my workout? But the problem is that it's going to increase your injury rate because it increases your stress. So yes, in some ways, if you can manipulate yourself to be able to put more into your workout, that would be really great. But the way that we generally do it is that we're putting more in because it's mindless, right? Or because our mind is just not in our head, or it's being distracted by something else, right? Whether it's the hoo-ha of the workout, where it's like, yay, let's the camaraderie piece, or it's the music, or it's the switching, the buzzer, the light color, whatever it is. The competition. There's a lot of distraction. And again, that distraction is there so you can do more in your workout, but we want you to do more because of being mindful and being strategic with doing more, not doing more because you're just trying to numb yourself to what's happening.
Right.
Numbing yourself to the exercise, again, is an incredible compromise to the health and function of your muscles and your joints. And we want to make sure that this exercise thing is repeatable for as long as possible, because we don't get any benefits if we can't repeat it.
Yeah, one thing that I think across the board people experience when they work out is if they're having to work really hard, at some level, it's uncomfortable. Now, sometimes we can kind of reprogram the interpretation of that discomfort, that temporary discomfort, as like, okay, that's the feeling of my health improving. That's the feeling of my fitness improving. That's the feeling of my strength improving. That's me going towards my goals. And a lot of people who work out often, they've kind of reprogrammed themselves to kind of interpret those signals that way. But it doesn't mean that, they're still not feeling that kind of level of discomfort, their muscles burning, the fatigue, everything like that, okay? A lot of times with these high intensity classes, there are, like you were saying, Julie, a number of distraction techniques implemented to keep us from being as aware of that kind of baseline level of discomfort, so we can keep pushing, we can keep going through it and everything like that. But like you were saying, the more disconnected we become from our body, from like a mind muscle standpoint, from an awareness standpoint, the higher the increased likelihood there is that we end up injuring ourselves, that we end up ultimately not being able to come back and work out again the next day, or even for a few days, either because we're sore, we're just not feeling it, or we don't want to have to go through like getting ourselves up mentally in order to be able to go through that level of exertion again. So while the distraction techniques seem like they can be a really useful thing to help you, like push yourself harder and get more from your workouts, at the same time, you need to make sure that you are staying very mindful of what's happening within your body while you're exercising.
So it's this point of the podcast when we're talking like this that you might be feeling really emotional. Like, Julie and Charlie, will you just shut up? You're making me mad. This is the way I like to work out. What are you talking about, right? So I do want to say this, is that there are many reasons why people exercise. And we cater to one type of peoples, community. We talk to one, you know what I'm saying. So we're trying to share with you, how do you build your exercise so that it's building your health long term? Many people use their exercise for competition in sport, and that is okay until it's not okay, right? So if you're listening to this, you're like, Julie and Charlie, great, love your thing, but I'm going to keep doing my HIIT style training. I am okay compromising my joints. Well, then great, you keep doing that. But the problem is that there's a huge lack of education and awareness of how do you exercise if you don't want to be compromising your joints, if you don't want to be in pain, but you still want the effects. Like, I don't want to do rehab exercises all the time, but I also don't want to go do HIIT training where I feel like my knees are going to blow out every time I do my squats. So this is what we're going to change to your HIIT workout. So you can do all the HIIT workouts that you're already doing, or if you're thinking about starting HIIT workouts, then keep these in mind. So we're going to divide this into like 2 categories of tips, right? So let's start with our cardio exercises. So that's things like your jumping jacks, your burpees, your jump squats, your running in place, your side shuffles.
The bike,
all
the
those,
rower.
Yes, bike, rower. All those cardio exercises. There's 2 things. So if you're doing HIIT training, you want intensity, right? So you can build intensity here with speed. This is the one place, the cardio. But if you build your intensity with speed, you have to lower the skill level. Okay, so you can't be doing this highly skillful thing that takes a lot of thought and mindfulness to stay safe and add speed. Like, you can't have those 2 together. So, for example, if you're going to do something like jogging in place, that's pretty low skill for a lot of people, and it's probably not going to throw out your back. Great. That's an awesome one. Or jumping jacks. But when it comes to
biking is relatively low skill.
Biking is relatively low skill, especially because the bike keeps you in a range that's safe. The places where you need to be really mindful is if you go and do sprints on a treadmill. That can really fling your hips forward and back in a big way.
Kettlebell swings.
Kettlebell swings, because you're launching something. And when you do those, it has a high chance of going more range than what your body can handle. Another one would be like burpees or jump squats. Like, we've done jump squats in one of our programs, but we do mini ones, right? So we're not doing this full giant range, because when we add intensity with speed, we have to lower the skill level. And so sometimes, or oftentimes, that means we're lowering the range as well.
Now, the thing to understand about this is, as your skill level improves, you can start to add more stuff and still be able to go fast. It's kind of like when you first start driving a car, your first exit isn't onto I-90 trying to, go 80, 85 with everybody else in the 70 mile an hour zone, right? Like, you are going, in a high school parking lot, or you're going on empty back roads where you're going, 15, 20, 25 miles an hour, and just getting the feel for it then. And then as your skill improves, cool, now you can start going faster. So as your skill improves from an exercise, coordination, motor control perspective, you can start to add in more stuff that are higher skilled. And because that skill level is relatively easier for you now, you can go faster and stay safe while doing it. So a lot of people who are really proficient at doing kettlebells, they can do kettlebells and move relatively fast with them, and they'll stay perfectly safe because their skill level is higher. It's like the whole Taebo thing, right? It's like, when you have somebody who is 62 years old and has never thrown a punch in their life, and all of a sudden you're going to be doing Taebo for 30 minutes a day in your living room, and you have this skill of throwing punches, and now you're trying to add the speed to it. It's like, okay, yeah, no wonder people were getting injured with that, right? So you can't jump into a skill level that you are not ready yet and add the speed, get your skill up, and then you can start to add the speed.
That's right. And by the way, if you are sore and achy after any workout, that means that you have done too much, or that you did have too much intensity. A lot of times that's going to be from speed related things. So that's with the cardio. So with cardio, you're thinking, I can add some intensity with speed, but I'm going to keep the skill level low, or just choose exercises that have low skill level. That'll keep your injury risk very low. And the other exercises, the resistance training, has different parameters. So again, we need increased intensity. And traditionally, we've added intensity with resistance training exercise with speed again. And this is the one where we don't want to add speed to. So resistance training exercises would be things like your squats, your crunches, your push-ups, your overhead presses, those types of exercises. And then you'll see people do them really fast. So we want to add intensity, not by speed, but rather by lowering your speed. So go slower. You'll see how much harder it is. By adding weight if you need to. So do more weight, move slower, and add focus. Add muscle focus. So don't be focusing on the launch 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but rather on the muscle squeeze. So these are going to be very different guidelines than your cardio piece.
Absolutely. But again, it's going to help to keep you safe, because it's going to allow you to really focus in on what's going on with your body and continuously check in, see how your joints are moving, see how your muscles are feeling the entire time you're doing the exercise, but still exercise at that higher intensity. Decreasing the speed when you're doing resistance training, increasing the weight or the load or the challenge, increasing your focus on making that mind-muscle connection. Those three things will help keep you safer, versus when you're doing the cardio naturally is going to be more speed as far as the intensity is concerned. And so you mitigate that risk by doing things at a lower skill.
You know, one of the most difficult things when you're applying these principles is the switch between. So one thing when you go to like a traditional HIIT, you're like, okay, I'm going to do my jumping jacks fast, then I'm going to do my presses fast, then I'm going to do my jump squats fast, and then I'm going to do my squats fast. I'm going to just do them all fast because I'm just going fast. And so when you do them the way we suggested, you have to keep it in your brain that, okay, my cardio, it can be fast. And then I need to switch my brain for the resistance training and really make sure that you switch gears, because that can be kind of hard. It's almost easier to just do it fast, or slow, right? But when you're like, okay, some fast and some slow, some fast and some slow, that's one of the biggest things that we found when we're teaching our style of HIIT, that we have to keep reminding our members, like, hey, okay, so remember, we're slowing down, we're focusing on this muscle or that muscle or this motion. And so keep that in mind when you're trying this out, that you're going to have to be switching gears a little bit.
Yeah, that's a really key point to keep in mind. And that's one of the easiest ways to make sure that you're more likely to stay safe when you're working out. If that concept seems a little bit foreign or a little bit unfamiliar, that's exactly actually how we go about structuring all the workouts within the Simple HIIT program within the Exercise for Life membership. And that's such a big emphasis within that program, is to making sure that, hey, when you're doing your resistance training, you are moving slowly, you're moving controlled, you're really focused on the muscle squeeze, and then making sure your transitions are there so then you can gather yourself, go into your cardio where you're going to go a little bit faster, and then when you transition back to your resistance training, again, slowing down again, having those distinct transitions between the two types of exercise. And for us, at least when we implemented that within the Simple HIIT program, we found that so many people could do these HIIT style workouts and not leave feeling achy, leave feeling beat up, not leave feeling sore, not risk compromising their health or setting themselves up for injury, because these transition periods were put in place, and the ways that you go about increasing the intensity that we just described, those were purposefully put in place as well. So that Simple HIIT program really incorporates all of it.
Right. So the Simple HIIT program is in our Exercise for Life membership. Actually, Charlie, we didn't put this in our notes, but our pre-holiday HIIT is really good too.
Pre-holiday HIIT one incorporates that
similar,
as well.
right?
Yes.
So we're still getting the high intensity interval training, but we're applying these principles so that it's safe, repeatable, less sore and achy. But if you'd like to participate in one of these programs, we'd love for you to join our membership. We have different options for membership, but if you would like to sign up, you can just go to www.exerciseforlifestudios.com/membership. We'll put a link in the YouTube or podcast description below so you can check it out. But our members have been loving the HIIT training. We've been loving it because, we do our programs too. And we want you to check it out as well.
Absolutely. Now, the only other thing that I will say about this in regards to this episode is I'm not suggesting that you drive 80 to 85 in a 70 mile an hour zone, but that's how fast people drive around here. But for those of us who learned to drive our cars in Wisconsin, we're going about 74 in that 70. So we are the reason why the right lane is so completely slow. We're completely fine with that. But anyways, that I just wanted to throw that caveat in there.
I used to drive really fast until I got my my first ticket when I was a teenager.
That happens sometimes.
And now I drive slow.
There we go.
So there you go.
All right. So who do you know that needs to hear this episode? Who do you know that is interested in doing HIIT style workouts, but is worried about either compromising their health while they're doing them or wants to keep doing them despite the potential risks to their health? Share this episode with them so they can understand the slight tweaks that they can make to their HIIT style workouts to not only make sure that their health, their strength, and their function continues to progress, but they do so in a way that lowers their risk for injury. And while you're online, head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. It helps people find our podcast when they're looking for information on exercise and they're looking for information on health. So if you found value in this conversation today, let us know by leaving us that 5-star rating and review. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. We always appreciate it. Have a fantastic week, and we'll talk with you all next week.
This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Julie and Charlie Gates, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical issue, consult a licensed physician.